code here. And let's cargo run this. See where we are. The architecture for the Rust side is very similar, but not exactly the same. The numbers are just like ever so slightly different because it's running at very similar. It wasn't exactly the same frames per second. But we see we have the two problems here. The score goes up when the obstacle goes off the left of the screen. And we really want to have the score go up when the player jumps over the obstacle. And then when we hit the obstacle, we want the notification for that. But besides that, well, that will be the two things we do to match with our the version we have with P5.js. So it sounds like to implement the same things, we're going to want to create the event handling struct and create those methods and the registration for it. We can use a vec because it's auto growing, and we're not going to have so many things. We're not worried about speed so much that we need to like create our own linked list, like the book did for the initial run through. So let us create. Probably not there. Create it in here. We're going to call this the event system. So pub struct event system. And we know that we're going to want all the observers. The observers are going to be a vec of, and so this is going to be interesting. What is it going to be a vector of? We need it to be a vector of, well, whatever is listening. So that's going to be interesting. So we're going to need a trait that can go into here instead of just each individual object. Otherwise, we will have to do a linked list because, yeah, if we would have to do a linked list if they're all different types. So we need to do traits to make them all the same type, or some kind of enum that basically like holds all the types for us. If I do a trait, I don't want to use a generic here because that would cause the vector to like be recreated multiple times, one for each type. I want them all to be stored together. Can I put a vector and like put a trait inside and then essentially use polymorphism in that way? Or do I have to do an enum and hold it in there? I think I might have to do like an enum to hold it, to hold like the different types. So what are we thinking about for like the different types of things? We know we need the obstacle. Actually, for ours, it's the who's holding the score. Not the player in this game. Is it just the main? The main. So the main game. So that would be like game state has to listen to the score. And well, there's already a game state. It's currently only holding if we're playing. This can also hold the score. Like there's no reason we can't. So that we have a public enum game state. We could also hold the score here. Oh, so game state itself is an enum, and that's it. So if I wanted like a game state that was a struct, that would be a little bit more interesting. And I could potentially put the score in there. we could put the score in the player, and then that would match up with what we have with the JavaScript version. That might be the right way to go. At least for our current architecture. So let's take this score. I'm going to remove it from there. I'm going to remove. Oh, look, the score is its own. Oh, okay. The score, I didn't even notice this. We have the score as its own struct, which means that it can increment and get and reset. The score can listen. Okay, this is nice. We're gonna come back here, undo you. I don't know what I changed here. And all right, so event system. I don't want to undo that. I want you to exist. So currently, we know that the score is going to listen for when there's going to be a change in the state. And when does that happen? In update, we're going to remove these score increments. Where does the oh, I guess we're going to have to make it so the obstacle has to check to see if it's first to the left and then next to the right of the player. It doesn't really matter. I could put it in the player, or I can put this into the obstacle. Right now we have, okay, so obstacle 1 run. We could add a function to it, pass in a reference to the player. Did the player jump over the obstacle? That would work. But let's if I start right now, we'd say, okay, this is gonna be a vector of, if we start with just score, we just begin naively. Even though we know we're going to have to add something else into it. So we know we're going to get into a point where we're going to have to refactor this. But let's just start to get something going here. So use super score. So we're going to say that the observers is a vector of scores. Right now, all that can apply here is just we have the score. Then so we have our observers. I don't necessarily think we need anything else. We do need the events that can happen. But I think we can do that in here with a private. Actually, no, it's going to have to be a public enum. Events. And so what's the first event that we're going to go for? This is running like collision. Collision with, actually no, this is jumped over. Jumped over obstacle. I think that's spelled correctly. Okay, so that's public enum events. We're just going to use that here. So I don't think we need to store anything else. We just have our public struct event system that stores the observers, and that's it. We now want to implement the event system. So pub function, I guess we'll begin with new. That returns a new event system. And we're just going to return event system. Observers is going to be an empty vector. Okay, so that gives us the beginning of that. We want to be able to add an observer. So public function add observer, mute self. And if we want, we're going to take in an observer. Now, right now, this is must be type score, but this is going to, have to be type something else. We're not going to return anything. We're just going to say self.observers. There it is. .push observer. That's it. So that adds it through. Now removing observer is actually going to be a little bit more interesting because we have to find the index of it and then like scrub it from there. I guess we could just not write that code yet, and then if we do need to remove it, like we didn't need to in the JavaScript game. That was code we didn't really need because once we start observing that's sort of it. So we could benefit from the fact that we know we're never going to stop observing. So if we do observer, then we're going to have a notify. So this pub function notify. Now when we notify, it's just going to be self, but we're also going to take in an entity. What is the entity that well, I'm not sure we want to take in the entity in this case because we don't know what it is. It would have to be generic, or it'd have to be some kind of trait. And I can't remember if you could substitute traits for structs when passing things around. I don't think you can. I could create like a wrapper struct or an enum. That would definitely work for that. But I'm not sure if entity actually gains us anything here. But the event definitely does. So if we do event, which is type events, we're not going to return anything, but we're going to loop through our observers. So for observer in self dot, and I want to just reference to this. I don't want to I want to do anything crazy like that. So self.observers. I have that here. Come on, you can find it. Then we want to call observer.onNotify, and we're going to pass it in the event. And that's it. Now, previously, in the book they created an observer class, and it wasn't like inherited, but they implemented this observer class. I guess it wasn't an observer class; it was an observer interface. So we could do that as a trait. Right now we're saying that this needs to be a score. But that's only because we happen to know that score is the first one to go for this. As soon as we go for the next one, then this will all change. But let's get into that in a few minutes. So this is our basic event system. Let's now create in the main library. We'll mod this event system. We'll use event system. Event system. we're not storing like the full event system, but we're going to have to create very specific events and then pass them around. So we'll do let, this is going to be the jump over obstacle event equals event system new. Okay. Now the whoever is playing this, now the way we've written this, it doesn't need to have like any kind of store or state or anything else like that. And I currently have, I think in here in update, here's where this, if obstacle is off screen, we're gonna score increment. But this might be easier to put some of this logic inside of obstacle and then pass it the player. That will definitely make it a lot easier. Then it can determine, did I jump over the player? So in, what are you yelling about? No field observers on event system. So pub struct event system. That's because semicolon ruined it. And then you're saying no method named on notify found for references score. Right. Because it's not in there yet. Don't worry, it will be. We could just add it. So pub function on notify. And the event. So we need to use that. I use super event system events. Event system, oh, is it? Oh, I need to get this out too, don't I? So if I'm going to do that, I need to use event system and events off of here and then in score. Yeah, then you can grab there. So you are type events. We're not going to return anything, and I'm not going to do anything right now. We're just going to sort of leave that as a warning. And that makes it so the event system, the event, use a moved value event. Do I want to do that? Oh yeah, no, I don't. I want to pass it in a reference to event, or I want to copy it or clone it. Mismatch types, expected, did not expect it a reference. So I can do that here too. All right, so no errors, everything is happy. Okay, so we notify now in the obstacle, we're gonna want a pub function, like check if, or I guess like handle. I mean, this is part of update, right? So we have get location, restart start. Well, we have this run here. So in run, if we also take in a player, which is just going to be a reference, we don't need it to be mutable, to a player, which you need to grab from super. Okay, so get a reference to a player in run here. So we're gonna, update our self location and velocity. And we also want to handle if the player has jumped over us. And I guess we could do if self dot player jumped over me. That is a reference. We will hand it a reference to the player. I may not need to give it a reference to the reference. I think this will just work. Then we need to notify. We need to run that notification, which means we need to store it inside of here. So let's use super event system. We can do this all right here. So we have player event system and the events. We're gonna store the jumped over event system. So player jumped over me event. This is going to have to be a reference, isn't it? Or I'm going to have to pass in, and we all know, like, it's pretty nasty if I end up having to store a reference here in obstacle. That will make me do lifetimes everywhere. So maybe here is not the right place. But if I pass it in to run here, so the what is it? The player jumped over event system. Which is a type of, it's a reference to an event system. So if self player jumped over me, pass it the player, then we want to call this player jumped over event system dot notify and pass it in the event. Well, the event is event oh, come on, you don't know. Oh, it's events, not event. That would help. All right, events jumped over obstacle. So we run that notification, and that's it. Now down here, we need to implement this player jumped over me. So this is a private function. Player jumped over me. We're going to take self and a reference to the player. Okay, if the player jumps over me, we need to get the player's position, the middle of the player, to begin with, and store that away. So let we can't actually do this up here. So we have to. We're gonna have to do this like sort of in the middle of all of this. Let's get rid of you. Start over again. This is gonna be let player's X position before. So player location X before And we're going to say that this is the player dot, am I allowed to get the location? No, get location dot x. So we get the player location before. We update our location. And I really want to do this as like half of the width too, to make it to the middle of the player. So player x before, so it's going to be x plus player dot width. Now this is, I can get a lens and a player for get like the middle of the player. That might help. Let's do that. Let's create a lens for getting the middle of the player. So pub function get like the middle location. So get location center self, and we're going to return just a point to 32. And that way, if we need the x and the y, like we can get the x and the y. But all right, so let location. I guess we could just straight up return any point to. For the x, it's going to be self.location.x plus self.width divided by 2. And for the y, self.location.y plus self.height divided by 2. And that's it. So return that. So now we can get the location center right here. That will make it a little bit easier. So get the player location x before, and what we really want, the player dot get location center. Now we update our own location, and we can do our if statement now. So if player location x before, so if this is less than, we already have the middle because the obstacles are upside down triangles, so that location is the middle of it. So if player location x before, if that's less than self.location.x, so if we started to the left and now we're to the right, and player dot get location center, so get the location again. Now if this player location dot x, if that is now greater than self.location.x, now we know that we could run this notification. So this is going to be the player jumped over event system dot notify events jumped over obstacle. And that's it. Mismatch types, expected struct, point, found F32. Wait, is self.location just, no, it's a vector. So I should be able to get the x off of it. Oh, we want this to be .x. Okay, so that now we're going to send the event when we jump over the obstacle. And that means we need to update you. So obstacle run, we now need to pass in the event system and a reference to the player. So reference to self.player. and then also the event system, which I think needs to be a reference to self dot. What did I store it? So I need to store this here so I can pass it around. So this is going to be jumped over obstacle event is a type event system. We'll create a new one. So here's this jumped over obstacle event. Let's store it. Now down here I can use it. So jumped over the obstacle event. Our score doesn't need to increment anymore. Not here. And we do this exact same thing. So self.player and self.jumped over obstacle event. It'd be helpful if I spelled self correctly. So now the obstacle is going to send the event as soon as we hit, as soon as our player jumps over that obstacle. I'm going to want now to listen to the obstacle. So I need to register myself as an observer in this event. So when we create everything here in this main library, we're creating our score here. We now need to register. We need to tell the score that we're registering itself into the event. And that's going to be a little bit interesting. I wonder, like, can I get away with, or am I going to have to use lifetimes for this? So I wonder if I can like box it up too. I wonder if that would help. So score new. Also, I haven't checked to see if there's an entire like observer like event system inside of Rust. That might be interesting as well. If there is one that I can take advantage of, that might work. So we create a new score. We have the onNotify method inside of it. The score is going to need to register itself, but it doesn't necessarily need to keep an instance of it active. It just needs to register itself. So if I pass it in a reference to, the jumped over obstacle event, and we go to score. When we create a new one, we have the jumped over obstacle event, which is a reference to not events, but an event system. Now we have this entire score 0, but I don't really care about that. I want to register, and can I even do that at this point? Because I can't pass in self, I don't think, because I haven't created a self yet. I wonder if like actually self would work here, like the capital S self. I don't think it does, because I think that just represents like the self type, not the actual instance, which hasn't been created yet. and I could create the instance under new and then have it register. That might be interesting. If I do something like let score equals, create a brand new score here. Now we're going to return score, so that will make that happy. Now if we have if I have like a register, so just a private, can this be a private function? I don't know. So register for event. I don't know if this needs to be, this might just be able to be self. So we're going to want to call this with the event system. Which is a reference to an event system, and then the event itself, which is an arm of events. I don't think we're going to need to return anything here. So register for the event. The way this is going to work is we're going to call it. We're going to pass in these two things. And this way we get access to self. So we're going to do event system dot add observer. And the observer is the score. So this is where we get into a little bit of trouble. If I want to store, I can't store a copy, like a reference to it. I would have to store, no, I can't just store a clone of it because then it would increment the wrong thing. I would have to, under this event system, store a reference to scores. And then this gets us into the, well, okay, we're going to need a lifetime. And so let's just create this basic lifetime here. And I'm betting it's going to say, okay, well, now you need a lifetime in here. So implicit eluded lifetime. Can I use an anonymous lifetime? But missing lifetime parameter. So now I have to do this here because it's in a vector of it's like that. I don't remember because I'm returning the actual event system. I'm not returning a reference to it. So I forgot where. Is it like that? Missing. Consider giving it a static lifetime. This function's return type contains a borrowed value, but there is no value for it to be borrowed from. Right, because it's just an empty vector so far. Now, if I give it like the same actual lifetime, I don't know how to say, because I don't want it to be a reference. I want it to just use this lifetime. Expected type found lifetime A. Yeah, so it doesn't like that. I may have to go and look this up later of how to do this. Other options, use of undeclared lifetime. Can I do that? Okay, so I think, is that here? It's not there. Did I declare it? Is it here? That's what it is. Okay, so here declares it for in here. Then in add observer, this needs to be a reference. So it's a reference to a score. An explicit lifetime required and a type of observer. And so we're constantly like sort of running into this now. But we have 4, even though this file looks good now, we have 4 errors. And so we see, okay, now we need lifetimes in my game. And if I do lifetime in my game, I need to run it everywhere else. That makes me wonder if I have a box. And so this might be good to go stop doing it in here, and let's switch over. Where's that other game? Oh, I closed it. Firefox Developer Edition. We'll do play. I think it was play Rust or play dot rust-lang@.org. Yeah. Okay. So let's see if we can play with this a little bit here and understand how I want to handle this. I have an object with a vector. Okay, so let's do we'll just create a struct score essentially. And right now it's a tuple, but let's say I just have an arm in here. Let's go through all of them. So we have a struct score, we have a struct event system. The event system is going to have a vector, so the observers, which is going to have a vec of a reference to a score. And so this is where we run into problems. I want to instantiate an event system and hand it the reference to the score. So if I do this, let my event equals event system observers, and this is going to be a vec. And so even if I just want to initialize an empty one, what errors are you going to give me? Right, so missing lifetime parameter. So it needs me to have a lifetime parameter for this guy right here. So we know that that means do that. Now, is there a way for me to get around that by like boxing it up? I haven't played with boxes too much. Like I've used them in the past, but it's been long enough ago that I need to like remember exactly what they're for and how it works. So if I box up it would be a box score, right? So it would be here, like a box with a reference to a score in it. Didn't like that at all. Event system. Oh, right. I added in. Started writing a lifetime. Yeah, so it still needs this expected lifetime parameter. So my thoughts are that I'm going about this the wrong way. Um, some mentors that I've had have told me that if you start needing to use lots of lifetimes around, which I have noticed also in the past, that if you need lifetimes a little bit in like one area of code, they just start spreading like wildfire. You need lifetime parameters everywhere now to handle it. There's usually a better way. So to implement this, I think I'm gonna have to find a different way. So I'm gonna do a little bit of research into uh, whether or not Rust has a event sort of system already for me. And I know they have some event type stuff. For example, they can do that with threads. So maybe I can use like the threading event system. Maybe there's a package that I can use. Although I would like to implement this on my own, but maybe I can learn from it. So I'm going to do a little bit of research, see what I can find, and hopefully tomorrow morning I will have enough information to sort of move forward with this again. And hopefully it won't require like a huge restructuring of the app, but it might. We'll find out. It's the joy of Rust programming is it is a bit different than JavaScript. So that's where I'm going to leave it off. Is I'm going to do a little bit of research. Anyways, thank you everybody for stopping by and watching. Thank you for watching if you're a VOD or if you're lurking. Lurkers do make all these streams and do make it really awesome. So thank you so much. And follow me here on Twitch or on Twitter if you want to get notifications for when I go live. With that, have a great day, and I will see you next time.